Thank you very much for joining. My name is Frank Summers. I am a certified financial planner. The firm I'm affiliated with is Cetera Investors. And a lot of this presentation was put together with folks at the Alzheimer's Association, so I really want to thank them. My information is up here on the screen. And if you have questions or topics that come up during this presentation, please feel free to give me a call or email me. There's going to be a lot of information that's coming at you today, and we're just going to touch on a lot of this at a pretty high level. So let's talk a little bit about why we're here. So this topic has to do with the financial issues that are associated with caregiving. But financial issues are one of the 5 core elements of our overall sense of well-being for us and for the person who's being cared for. And when this got put together, I really thought about how could we talk about things that are really going to help people, that are going to minimize some of the stress that they feel or some of the anxiety that might come with overall caregiving. So we're going to talk about putting together a plan, talk a little bit about some day-to-day management. We'll talk a little bit about the impact on the person who's being cared for, and then a little bit on, some self-care for us as individuals. So with that, let's talk about the benefits of early planning. And I want to put some context there. When I say early planning, I'm saying just early in the process of planning. So whatever stage the person that you're caring for is at, this is really step one. And the benefits are for both the caregiver and the person who's being cared for. When you take a step back and put together a plan and a structure, a budget, a projection for where things are going, and a backup plan, you're going through a process of establishing that structure for yourself, and you're hopefully engaging the person who's being cared for so that they're being respected and the things that are really important to them are being heard and their issues are being taken into account. And part of what that does is when you reach a stage where that person is maybe incapacitated, or they're not able to articulate some of those decisions for themselves, what's happening is you've had some of those conversations up front, so you have that information, and you've got some comfort in knowing that you're doing the thing that this person would want to have happen. And that's a really important point. The first step is just to put the cards out on the table, is just to get control of the overall finances. And I'm saying this both for the person who's doing the caregiving, for you, the caregiver, as well as for the person who's being cared for. Now, there's going to be a lot of impacts to the person who's doing the caregiving, but then you also have, as I said, the person who's being cared for, and they really want to normally be engaged, especially when it's their money and it's the decisions about what's being done with their money and with respect to their care. So the first step is to put all of the expectations out there, as I said, on the table, all of the expenses, all of the income, all of the various components of putting that together. Now let's talk a little bit about the hidden cost of caregiving, and this is actually pretty important. The quote that's up here on the screen is that 78% of caregivers have out-of-pocket expenses, and I think that that's a really low number. I think it's more like 100% of people have some form of out-of-pocket expenses. But then there are some other things that happen to many caregivers, and that is that they either reduce the amount of hours that they work. Some people retire early. Some people leave their jobs. Some people go to part-time. And in many instances, what that means is a significant reduction in income. And it can also mean that a lot of the benefits that people get when they're working for an employer go away. Some of the income that might go, an employee match that might go into a retirement plan might stop. Some of the other benefits that are there might stop. And that can really be an impact, and that's something that needs to be thought about. The other is that for those who are younger than age 65, this is just one of those notes that there are a number of programs that are available for people who are older than 65, and that can be an impact for some people. Now, one other point that I want to make here is that there's a point about financial literacy with respect to caregiving. And especially when you get into a situation where people are older or they have, some form of affliction or something else, all of a sudden, a lot of the language changes, a lot of the vocabulary changes, and there starts to be conversations about things that we may not have talked about or thought about before. And so not knowing how those things are exactly supposed to happen and where they're supposed to go, that can result in making some costly mistakes, and that can result in spending money that may not need to be spent. So there's another potential hidden cost. And then lastly, I think that the other component that's here is that we have found that for a lot of people who are providing care, that they experience a great deal of stress. They experience anxiety. Some people experience depression. And it's just important to recognize that and then to take a step back and say, hey, wait a minute. What can we do to recognize that this may be an impact and then try to put those pieces in place to avoid that happening? Let's talk a little bit about the person who is being cared for. And as I said before, all of us have a very fundamental, very core to our being, feeling around our money and how it gets spent. And one of the things that really impacts somebody who's being cared for is if they lose that control. If they are not able to control their own money, their own expenses, and those sorts of things. And so it's really important to know some of the signs that those people may be having some trouble. Now, I've seen some of this in my own practice, and what I've noticed is when people start to have difficulty doing calculations. So when someone you can see that they're struggling with some basic addition, or they're struggling with the impact of taxes on something, that to me is a sign that there may be an issue that's there. But some of the other issues, and these are things that I've actually have seen personally, so situations in which utilities get shut off because those bills didn't get paid, or large packages from QVC start showing up on the porch or getting compiled into the living room. So, and those things, sometimes it can be kind of comforting, or it can be one of those things that, somebody is a bit bored or they're awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's pretty easy to order stuff when they're flashing a phone number on TV. But they can be signs that someone may not be making the best decisions. And then also, if there starts to be repeated phone calls, telemarketers or charities or others, and some unexplained activity that goes on with some of the funds. Now, how can you take this information, if you've put everything out on the table, as I said, really thought about where does everything stand and what is happening with the person that's being cared for, and that gives you really that overall structure of where are we today and where do we think that things are going. So that is the point at which you want to look at where are the income and the spending. What do we think is going to happen as maybe an illness progresses or the person is getting older? Do we think that there are going to be more expenses? Is it going to get more expensive? Is it going to be a situation in which this will progress into needing a care facility or something like that? What are the assets and debts that somebody may have? And this is one of those kind of hidden tips, but it's really important. So if there's one thing that you just want to jot down for yourself, it's knowing where the tax and financial documents are stored and knowing where the legal documents are stored. I'm going to come back to why that's really important, but I also want to point out that this is at the point in which you really want to talk about who is the team of people who are either supporting the person that's being cared for or who can step in and help both from a personal level, but then also from a professional level. So who is the financial advisor or brokerage advisor? Who is if there's a financial planner? Is there a banker or a particular branch that this person goes to? Is there a tax preparer? Are there employer benefits that this person may still have funds that are at an employer? But knowing who those people are and jotting down their information can really be a lifesaver later. And a big part of that is to really take that moment to then look and to say, well, what can these people do that is going to take some of the stress and some of the work off of my shoulders as a caregiver? And for each of us who are professionals in this space, we've lived this story a number of times. So we've heard some of those financial terms. We have seen some of the situations that arise. We've talked to one another, and we really can help. And so think about who that team of people is. Now, I mentioned before about the knowing where the tax and documents are, and I mentioned about the legal documents. And this is another of the very important points, and I would add attorney to that list of team. State laws change all the time. Situations, with respect to legal documents and what is recommended to be in legal documents change. And so if those legal documents are more than 3 to 5 years old, then it's really time to be sure that they're updated. Or if the person who's being cared for is reaching a stage where they can articulate, what it is that they want. Maybe they fade in and out, but they're kind of struggling a bit. That's kind of your last call to be sure that their wishes can be respected by meeting with that attorney and having that discussion and being sure that those things are incorporated into those documents. And that can be a really important thing. And while you're there, one of the things that you need to look at is a durable power of attorney for finances. Now, as I said, you kind of put the base together. You know where things are. You've got a budget. You know where the assets and the debts. You know where you think that the condition that the person has is going to progress. Now it's time to look at the income and potential funding sources and some of the things that people may not have even thought about. So this person may have their own personal resources. They may have income or a pension or retirement fund, those sorts of things. They may, own various property, various investments. All of those are personal resources. There are some other resources that are available both from the federal level and from the state level. And there's a couple of really good tips that are on this particular slide. Now, from the federal level, we start talking about Medicare and Social Security and some of the benefits that come with that. And I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with those things. But one important point is to think about the veterans' benefits. If the person that you're caring for is an elderly person, then back at the time when they may have been enrolled in the military, they would have had veterans benefits that really were available for officers. And now those benefits are more available to anyone who served. And so even if there's a question, it can't hurt to reach out to the Veterans Administration and to have that conversation. The next thing that's on that same section there is the Compassionate Allowance Initiative, and that is for particular conditions can help to expedite things through the Social Security process. And so that is another area where if you believe that this person may be eligible for some additional Social Security benefit, the best time to start is right away and to have that conversation with them. The last thing that I want to mention here is something that is called the benefitscheckup.org. All you do is log in, put in your zip code and the sorts of things that you are concerned about, and that is a system that can come back with a list of programs, benefits, discounts, all kinds of things that can help somebody who is at a lower income. So thinking about all of those different sources can really help to define where funds are coming from. Now we get into like the day-to-day. So, you see where the income is coming from. You've seen what is the state of mind of the person who's being cared for, and are they able to handle their own money? Are they starting to experience any form of issue with respect to that? Or even if they're not. And this is when it's kind of a dual-fold thing. First, is it possible to do something that's helping to alleviate stress and work, or just take an additional chore off the plate? And secondly, is there a way to add a layer of protection? So reaching out to the bank and doing a lot of electronic auto pay, or signing up for bill pay kind of things, having the bank send you a copy of the statements, or sending you a text alert if there has been a large withdrawal. Those things can allow that person who's being cared for to remain, or to feel as though they've got that level of control over their finances, but you still have knowledge if something starts to be suspect. Another really good tip here is to reach out to the credit bureaus and to freeze credit, so that if anybody tries to access credit, they're going to be denied, and it's just gonna freeze. And then lastly, try to put a stop to some of those, telemarketers or, charitable calls, those sorts of things, by getting on the do not call list. And now there's one really important point that I would like to make here, because I mentioned before about getting the durable financial power of attorney. The point that I want to make is this. When you have those materials, make sure that you pay a visit with the person who's being cared for to the financial institutions where funds are being held. If a stranger were to come into my office and say, I've got a power of attorney for this person and I need money, my answer is going to be no. And that is well within my responsibility, because my duty is to my client, not to the person who's holding that power of attorney. And what I'm going to do is reach out to the attorney, I'm going to reach out to the person who's being impacted, I'm going to reach out to others to make sure that that is valid and accurate. And so it's really important to take care of that in advance. On a longer term, I said before about making sure that you knew where the tax forms are located and various other things. These are things that are important, because when it comes time to talk about moving into a facility, or to engaging with Medicaid or other benefits, those are all going to be things that need to happen very, very quickly. And when they happen, they're all going to ask for those tax forms. They're all going to ask for that financial paperwork. And so making sure that you have that immediately accessible is going to really help to lessen the stress and the anxiety that's going to come with that particular point in time. That can be kind of a difficult time. Later, when you get to that point about end of life, or somebody, the situation needs to go to probate or something like that, also having those materials is going to be very, very helpful. And so that is another important point. And something that I've learned, and I kind of wish I didn't learn it, but I did, is even with people who've been your family your entire life, When the going gets tough in a situation like this, sometimes you find out all new things about some of those people. And so having that paperwork and having some of those conversations as early as possible can help to mitigate that impact later. I said before that we would have a list. These are the core documents. In my view, as a professional financial planner, my view is if you're 18 or older, you should have all of these documents. But these are all the core things that somebody might need. And if you're at a point where you want to be sure that somebody's wishes are absolutely going to be respected, there are three options that are at the bottom of this slide, either DocuBank. There's a Secretary of State registry in many states. There's a living will registry that's nationwide. And those things can all hold these documents on file so that medical providers and others can access them. And lastly, take care of yourself. I said before about, financial well-being is one of the 5 core tenets of an overall feeling of well-being. And quite honestly, somebody, having an illness or being a caregiver can impact all of those things. It can impact your career. It can impact, your social life. It can impact your financial life. It can impact all of those things. And something I think that's really important is if you're on an airplane and the oxygen mask drops down, they tell you put yours on first. And the reason for that is because you're not prepared for how fast that airplane is going to drop. And if that happens and you're the able-bodied person and you're trying to put a mask on somebody else, you're going to pass out and then you're not good to anybody. So it's really important. There are certain things at which you really do need to take care of yourself first and know, those points that are important and then, reach out to help others. So at that point, make sure that you've got a backup plan. Talk to some of the family members about who else can provide some of this care. Make sure that you have a respite plan. There are certain facilities that can help out on weekends and that sort of thing. Make sure that you know what will happen as things progress and you know who your professionals are. And professionals like me, just know that we are here to help you. We want to do whatever it is that we can to make this process easier for you. So put that plan together, know who the professionals are, know where your paperwork is, and take care of yourself. Thank you.